So I'm Korita Steverson from Warrenton, North Carolina. I'm the project lead for the Front Proch Grocery Cooperative. So the Front Porch is based in a very small community called Warrenton, North Carolina. It is in Warren County, North Carolina, which is primarily Black. It's a 20,000-ish person county, so a relatively small community that has not had a grocery store in the town, which is the county seat, for the last 5 years. If they're lucky enough to have access to transportation, because we don't have public transportation where we live, there is a Food Lion in the town nearest to us, but a lot of people who live in the city center walk to a Dollar General. Unfortunately, the one inside of town, like the major one, does not sell produce like some of them do now. Yeah. I think we are starting to see a very different health outcome, right? As we look at food as medicine, and that becomes more of a conversation piece in our country. I think, and I've been known to say that Warren County gives people diabetes because they're eating out of boxed product for a lot of it. Even those of us who have access to transportation and can drive somewhere else, we're going to eat what's quick and easy to get in most cases. So I think we see a lot of that. It is an aging population, so it's harder sometimes to make those connections because people will say that those things are genetic or people are aging and those are where these changes are coming from. But I think when we talk to people, we hear very clearly that people need and want access to fresh, healthier food options. Yeah. Initially, the location that we're looking at was a Lowe's Foods, so very nice chain store. Based on sales, they changed it into their lower end product line, so the Just Save grocery store, but still in the same footprint, same location. And from talking to the people who were managing the sale of that property, what the biggest issue for them was recouping their money on the strip mall because they owned the entire strip mall. The grocery store is kind of a loss leader, right? Because they drive people to a location. And with the second and third generation tenants of Dollar Tree, Subway, H&R Block, they weren't able to recoup the money on the full property. And so it just wasn't financially good for them to be in the space.
And is that same space like the likely space that any grocery would be in?
Yeah, it's in the second largest or busiest transportation spot in our community. So it's a really good location to have any kind of a business that's going to appeal to the majority of our population. Yeah. So Food Lion is inside of our community. It's in the next the next two towns, right, in Norlina and Littleton, and they do a sizable amount of money. The one closest to me is doing about $12 million a year. So it's not a community that can't support a grocery store. I think it can't support a 36,000 square foot grocery store the way that Lowe's would have liked to see it. I think others have had some interest, but when we held community meetings, people said they didn't want an Aldi or they didn't want a Carly C's, that those things didn't necessarily meet their needs. And so I think that kind of dissuaded the town and municipal leadership from continuing to try and recruit those organizations into our area. The thing we keep hearing is that people want a full-service grocery store, and so I think when they were looking at the way an Aldi is laid out, it's not set up the same way a Food Lion is, and so to them it just wasn't the same. We know that the people in our community are really interested in having a butcher, being able to purchase like fried food from the deli, like that type of thing, which Aldi doesn't do, and so I think it was more so that right now people in our community will drive a significant distance to get like fresh cut meats. I think because we're a rural southern community, like barbecues and like grilling a whole hog and doing that type of stuff is still very culturally relevant there. And so I think, you don't do that at Aldi. My family actually purchased the building that we're looking to locate the co-op in. The initial idea being we were just going to bring a small locally owned grocer back into the community. And then we were going to do some other things in the building to support the cost of the size. And spending time there, I didn't live in the community when we made the purchase. My parents grew up there, but it's not where I grew up. And I was visiting one day, and there was a lady walking with a Dollar General bag to a lower income kind of apartment housing community. And it reminded me of a story my grandmother had told me about walking with her children to get groceries at the A&P when I was younger. And it kind of sparked this conversation around how can we turn the grocery store into some kind of an economic driver versus just a grocery store, which people were, clamoring for. And my parents both grew up on farms, and it kind of became this larger evolutionary conversation for us. And so we are blessed to have board members that have kind of come from all over the community. We've been working really hard to try and recruit people who represent all of the facets of the community. While it is a Black-led co-op at this point, we also had a president who was a member of our Halawasaponi Native tribe that's in our area. We have had white retired military members, just trying to make sure that some of the silos that have been built up in the last 60 to 70 years can be broken down, because food is universal. All of us are going to eat it, and trying to make sure everyone is recognized in the building of the organization. We try to make sure that they're included in all of the conversation, that they're actively recruited to the conversation instead of it being, oh, they just showed up. Conversationally, we've been and presented to the tribal, their leadership, trying to make sure that they understand that they're fully welcome in the process, and trying to ask questions about foods that might be culturally relevant for them that they're not seeing in a Food Line or a Dollar General. We try to make sure when we're having community things that they're also represented. So we just hosted a food festival in our parking lot, and it was opened by a tribal member in prayer, and then we had a tribal dancer as our second performing act, followed by a Black Christian singer. So just trying to make sure it's part of the full conversation every time that we're doing it.
One thing I think is really interesting about y'all's story is a lot of people's cooperative path kind of looks like talking to the community, figuring out the priorities, and then you get the space. You have the space.
Yeah.
Can you speak to what, getting people to buy in? Do you feel like it's easier because you already have the building, or?
Yeah. I don't know. I think they both come with some problems, right? So we're holding a building and not charging any money to the cooperative because we fully believe in the idea and pushing it forward, which as a family is some money that we're spending every year, even if we just look at tax valuations, right? But I think it allows us to, for some people, it shows progress that I think helps. So we've been kind of working this path for 3 or 4 years because we were going to do the other thing beforehand, but we didn't start membership sales until February of this year. Again, our community has 20,000 people in our county, and we're at 230 members now, which is pretty fast comparatively. So I think it has benefits there, right? Because we can host events in a location. We can bring people consistently back to the area to have a conversation. But then I think when we talk, particularly in terms of Black people in our community, I don't know that it helps with the trust building, because I think there are different concerns around, is it something that my family might benefit from, right? Differently than the other people who are looking at the project. Is it going to be more of the same, where people who have had more money than them have come into the community and then never really fulfilled their promises? So I think I don't know that it's one way is easier or the other. I think banking terms, if an organization is willing to take a loan, having a building is much easier than finding a building. But yeah, it brings its own other types of problems.
So what stage of development are you all at? I heard you say some sales, but are you fully built out, or is it more of
Yeah, it's not even a market at this point. We're just doing community events in the space, and we have a supper club that we do every month. People come out. We have a caterer or a food truck. It's low cost to them, so $5 entry point, but we were able to get some grant funding where we're paying the community member who's providing the food regular pricing. And then those guys are encouraged to include at least one or more local food product in there. So our goal is for the end to be able to demonstrate what the circular economy looks like for people who have not ever really thought about it, where they've had a really low barrier to entry, and that it makes the co-op make sense for them. I don't know what stage we're in. Usually when people ask me, I'm like, we're in all of them, honestly, because we're doing it I've got a lender identified and we've got a building, but we're still building membership. I really think the new version of the stages is much more applicable for most people.
That's really interesting. Yeah, I feel like you're the first person I've met who has a building and is now building.
Yeah, it's a weird, it's not the way that the initial programming was kind of laid out. I think for FCI, they might say we're a 2B if we were in the old version of the system, just because of the foundational and governance building that we're still doing while working from the other side. Yeah. when we talk in terms of challenges, one, in rural communities, communication is very different from in suburban or urban areas. Like, I work in an urban area, so I travel about an hour into work, and I could come up with one or two Facebook groups I could probably communicate with and tell thousands of people something. In a rural community, we're happy if we have 1,000 people in that Facebook group, or, we don't have like a local TV station. We have a newspaper that comes once a week. And so you're looking a week out when you're doing things, and there's really only like one reporter. So trying to communicate and share like press releases and have people integrated into things can be difficult. And people will consistently say, we're just now hearing about this. And I'm like, I've already been on the radio this week, and I sent a press release, and it's on our Facebook, and it's on our Instagram. We even have a Pinterest account. Like, I don't know how else to reach you guys. But I think it does also bring an easier time when we talk about like ambassadors and community members being willing to have the conversation, because we have lots of people who are going to churches they grew up in and are just willing to stand up and say, hey, you guys, I heard this thing, and we should be dealing with it that way. So yeah, it's interesting. If you look at just economics, there's the ability of building the cooperative in a way that helps people understand what a cooperative is and then further advances the economic development, right? So a cooperative grocery store could, because all of the members are owners, then offer health insurance to people in a community that don't have access, because we don't have large corporate jobs. But it also does things, I think, that build trust in the community and help with workforce development and some of the focus items that in rural communities where there may be most needed, there aren't economic pathways to those things. I think it allows us access. Like, we're planning a food co-op field trip for our community members in pairing with the Ella Baker Educational Project of North Carolina. So we're gonna take people from our community and check out like the Weaver Street markets and Durham Co-op, so they can see what a co-op looks like, and they can take that back out into the community and be like, no, it really was a grocery store, right? It's not some scary, massive thing for people to connect with. And so I think we get to build whatever we want in the co-op, which is really great, because I think general capitalist, Food Lion, Dollar General, they're going to tell us what we need in food terms, and that's not necessarily what the people in our community want. And this gives us that opportunity for them to do the one person, one vote, gives them a very clear, hey, we want this, and we can make that happen. I live there now. My parents met actually when they were bused to the same school during desegregation. So this is definitely my community. I just didn't get raised in it. I spent every other weekend basically there because both sets of grandparents were there. And so no, I mean, I think it's just really important to look at the kind of rural landscape for grocery in the U.S. as being really ripe for cooperative organizing and people working together with their community to resolve the problems rather than waiting for them to bring it to us, because small municipal governments don't have the same level of funding that others do. And so if we sit around and wait for them to resolve it, we're just never going to have anything. Yeah, I think it's much easier to have a conversation with my neighbor. Like, I lived in Asheville, North Carolina, so the western part of the state, for 25-ish years. I didn't know my neighbors on either side of me when I left the community. I know everything about probably every person on my end of Main Street just because of the flow of information being just very different in rural communities. And I think it allows us to be more committed to each other's successes, which cooperatives are set up perfectly for.